Hey guys, tonight we slip quietly into a city that pretends to be asleep, but never really is. Athens under a lavender blue sky, the moon hanging like someone forgot to dim the world's biggest lantern. You drift through its narrow stone streets, hearing sandals scuff and distant lyres humming, all while a strange little tension hums beneath the cool night air. It's the kind of place where gods walk around pretending to be ordinary, and mortals act braver than they probably should. And honestly, if you tried to survive one full day here, you'd probably get flattened by a runaway chariot before breakfast. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me your location and your local time in the comments. It's always wild seeing where you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step deeper into Athens, where light fog curls around your ankles like a pet cat deciding whether you're trustworthy. The Parthenon looms above the city. Even unfinished, even under torchlight, it radiates that unmistakable, "we built this with math you haven't even unlocked yet" energy. The marble glows faintly, catching the moonlight in its grooves, which is impressive considering marble is basically the diva of stones. But tonight, your attention keeps sliding away from the familiar landmarks and towards something quieter. Something that feels like a hum beneath the city's heartbeat. A rivalry. A whisper. A tension between a goddess and someone who doesn't realize she's stepped onto divine toes. You nudge through the agora, trying not to trip over baskets of olives or wake the cranky man sleeping on top of his amphora like it's a waterbed. Vendors, done for the night, pull wool blankets over carts of pottery, fish, bronze trinkets. Athens' version of putting your online store in maintenance mode. A cat darts across your path, pausing to give you that classic feline look of, "You don't belong here, mortal," before strutting off with its tail curled like a question mark. This is a city of restless craftspeople, potters shaping wet clay, stonemasons chiseling spark into stone, metal workers puffing bellows until bronze glows orange.
And weaving?
Oh, weaving is practically a competitive sport here. You can almost hear the looms clacking in your imagination, wooden frames, taut threads, hands moving fast enough to impress even an Olympian. And the Olympian watching most closely, Athena, isn't just the goddess of wisdom and war. She's also the goddess of craft, of skill, of weaving. Historically, Athenians genuinely believed she invented the first loom itself, which is one of those mainstream facts scholars just shrug and file under. Yep, sounds Greek. Yet there's also that quirky bit of lore, the claim that Athena supposedly wove the very clouds above Mount Olympus during her downtime. Historians still argue whether this is poetic exaggeration or just ancient fanfiction taken too seriously. You breathe in the city's night air, olive smoke, sea salt, and the scent of damp limestone, and walk toward the quieter side streets where artisans live. Torches flicker in front of tightly packed homes, and you can hear the faint rhythm of a loom somewhere behind a closed wooden door. Someone hasn't gone to bed yet. Someone is working. You don't know her name yet, but you feel the tug of her presence like a loose thread snagging your fingers. A mortal girl with nimble hands and a mind sharp enough to slice through the arrogance of gods. A girl weaving tapestries so stunning, so impossibly precise, that people whisper her talent must come from the divine. Arachne. Though tonight, she's just a shadow inside a workshop, back hunched, fingers flying, eyes narrowed at a pattern she's determined to perfect. And the more you watch, the more you feel it. Athena has already noticed this mortal. Not with anger. Not yet. More like an eyebrow raise from a goddess who doesn't get surprised often. You pause near a fountain shaped like a lion whose expression suggests it has seen too much. Water trickles into the basin, cold and silver. You dip your fingers in, and the chill sends a little zing up your arm, keeping you awake. The Athenians believed the city's fountains were watched over by nymphs, fickle, easily offended beings, so you offer a tiny nod of respect, just in case. No one wants to be water-cursed. Overhead, an owl glides silently across the rooftops. You follow its path automatically, Athena's bird, of course. A symbol of her clarity, her intelligence, her ability to see everything, even things mortals hide in tiny back-alley workshops. As you wander, you catch traces of conversations drifting from shuttered homes. Old men debating whether Spartan sandals are overrated, women murmuring gossip about a neighbor who claims Hermes stole her lunch, and somewhere a young apprentice complaining about how his master makes him polish bronze helmets until he can see his own future reflected inside. You move past them until the air shifts, that electric prickle like when someone whispers your name from behind. Except no one's there. Or, at least no one mortal. Athena's presence slides through the streets, subtle as a breeze. You don't see her. You just sense the tiniest pressure on your ears, like the city itself is paying attention. She loves Athens fiercely, protects it,
Guides it.
and she hates, absolutely hates, when mortals start thinking they're better than the gods. But tonight, you can tell she isn't angry yet. She's curious, maybe even impressed. It's a rare emotion for someone carved out of strategy and pride. You let your steps carry you toward the illumination seeping through one small window, the workshop where Arachne works. Moonlight hits the sill. Threads glimmer through the crack in the shutters, catching the glow like fireflies trapped in silk. You swear you can even smell the fibers, raw wool, plant dyes, and the faint tang of olive oil used to soften the threads. You picture Athena somewhere up on Mount Olympus at this exact moment, leaned forward, chin perched on her palm, watching this mortal girl with something halfway between admiration and a warning simmering just behind her eyes. Gods love talent, but they hate competition. You shift your weight, hearing the stone beneath you creak. Somewhere far off, a rooster starts crowing at the entirely wrong hour, which is typical for ancient Greek roosters. They were terrible at timekeeping. And as you stand there, nose full of night air, city humming around you, all wings brushing the sky, you sense the very first strand of tension tighten between goddess and mortal. The kind of strand that, if pulled too sharply, could snap. And you're here, right at the beginning, with Athens holding its breath, waiting for the loom to clatter into destiny. You hover outside Arachne's workshop just long enough for the night air to nip your ears, and then curiosity nudges you forward. You push the wooden door with your fingertips, just enough to peek inside, and the moment you do, you're swallowed by a cloud of color. Threads hang everywhere like captured rainbows, crimsons, sea greens, sun golds, indigos so deep they look like twilight dipped into dye. The place smells like warm wool, crushed berries, and that faint metallic tang from the spindle weights clinking together. You step in without meaning to, the floorboards giving a sleepy groan beneath you. Inside, Arachne moves like someone who no longer remembers she has a body. She's all motion, all focus, leaning into her loom as if the frame and the threads whisper secrets she's trying to catch. You can tell she's young, not a child, not fully grown into that don't talk to me before olive oil, adult mode, but right in the pocket of ambition where confidence glows just a little too bright. She doesn't notice you. She barely notices anything that isn't yarn and pattern and the stubborn challenge of making perfection look effortless. Her hands fly. You swear you see afterimages, like she's glitching through reality at 60 frames per second while everyone else in ancient Greece is stuck at 12. Her spindle rolls in smooth arcs, and the shuttle darts through the warped threads so swiftly the air hisses around it. If you've ever tried weaving or even just attempted to untangle earphones from your pocket, you know this level of control shouldn't be possible out of a regular mortal. And that's exactly what people in Athens are whispering tonight. You wander closer, careful not to touch the loom because touching an artisan's loom without permission is basically ancient Greek for start a fight. Arachne bites her lip, squints at a tiny detail in the tapestry she's building, a curl of embroidery so thin it looks like it was painted, not woven. She adds a line of blue thread, and suddenly the scene on her loom sharpens into a coastline, waves curling with such realism you half expect to hear seagulls complaining in the distance. There's your mainstream historical fact for the night. Weaving really was a cornerstone of daily life in ancient Greece. Women took pride in it, households relied on it, and skilled weavers were genuinely respected. It wasn't just chores, it was economy, identity, artistry, and depending on your thread tension, either peaceful meditation or full meltdown mode. Honestly, Ancient weavers were the original content creators grinding long hours for an audience of picky family members. But the whispers spreading about Arachne? Those aren't ordinary admiration. They're tinged with the kind of awe people save for miracles, or for spotting a favorite god disguised as a random traveler asking if you have any spare bread. Some say Arachne learned weaving from the nymphs themselves. A quirky tidbit? The story goes that woodland nymphs used to peek into her home at night, drawn by the strange glow of her handiwork, and giggled with delight as they pressed around her loom, offering tips, jokes, sometimes even tangling the thread out of spiteful playfulness. Whether that's true or just ancient gossip-level fanfiction, historians still argue whether nymph mentors were metaphorical or literal beings in regional myth. You watch Arachne straighten her back, flex her fingers, and lean in again. A tiny bead of sweat drips down her temple. She doesn't even blink it away. Her focus is absolute. It's almost disturbing how effortlessly she blends confidence with obsession. And it's that obsession that's starting to make people nervous. Earlier today, though you weren't here yet, you overhear citizens outside murmuring about what happened in the Agora. A group of older women, proud of their weaving heritage, had gathered around Arachne's stall to marvel at her tapestry depicting a river god twisting through reeds. One woman, probably someone used to being the resident weaving expert of her neighborhood, casually suggested Arachne should thank Athena for her gifts. And that's when Arachne's pride flared like a torch dipped too deep into oil. "No goddess taught me," she said, too loud, too sure. "My skill is mine alone." Athenians don't usually drop their amphory in shock, but today a few nearly did. Claiming personal talent wasn't the issue. It was denying Athena any connection to it. It sounded disrespectful, dangerous, like poking at the divine with a very short stick. Arachne said nothing blatantly blasphemous, but the tone, the smirk, the deflection of praise, they actually, "I'm just naturally this good" shrug, that was enough to get the city buzzing. Mortals can be jealous, but gods? Gods have cosmic egos that make YouTube comment wars look like warm hugs. As she works now under candlelight, you can almost feel her replaying that confrontation in her head, turning it over like a stone. She wasn't trying to offend Athena, not really. She was defending her identity, her autonomy, that sense of "I built this, I earned this" that every artist clings to like a lifeline. You step around the room, fingers brushing a hanging bundle of thread-dyed violet with crushed mulberries. The colors are richer than anything you've seen from a mortal dyer. That's the thing, Arachne isn't just good. She's so good that people leap straight to supernatural explanations because the truth feels too boring. Excellence makes crowds uncomfortable. Arachne snaps another thread into place, her jaw tightening. The candlelight flickers, reflecting off the brass nails hammered into the loom's frame. Outside, voices drift through the shutters. Neighbors murmuring, some defending her, some critiquing her attitude, one audibly chewing olives much louder than necessary. You can almost hear the city gossip machine revving up like a chariot on a downhill slope. You whisper to yourself, "Girl, please slow down before a goddess materializes and teaches you a very dramatic lesson." But Arachne can't hear you. Even if she could, she probably wouldn't listen. Pride is a warm blanket and a blinding fog all at once. Still weaving, she lifts her chin just slightly. Enough to show a flicker of defiance. Enough to tell the night, "I'm not apologizing." And that flicker is what Athena will feel from Olympus, the spark of a mortal claiming mastery over a domain she invented. You watch Arachne examine her weaving, unfold the bottom edge, and run her fingers across the threads with reverence edged in challenge. Whatever she's telling herself in that quiet room, it's something like, "Let anyone, god or mortal, try to do better." Somewhere, far above, you imagine Athena narrowing her eyes at that exact moment, sensing the shift, sensing the mortal's boldness edging toward insolence. Not punishable yet, but close. That tension, that invisible cord between goddess and girl, tightens like a loom's warp being pulled to its limits. And as you stand in the dim, thread-filled workshop, watching Arachne work through the final strokes of her midnight masterpiece, You realize you're witnessing the moment before a storm, the kind that doesn't rumble across the sky, but instead weaves itself through fate, pride, and the delicate threads holding divine patience together. You ease back from the loom's glow, letting the wooden door click shut behind you as you drift into the cooler night. The street is still quiet, all wings brushing the dark like soft punctuation marks. You wander only a few steps before feeling that prickle again, the one that tells you the air is no longer just air, the night isn't just night, and you aren't just some random observer on a casual midnight stroll. Something is shifting. Someone is arriving. And then you see her. At first, she's just a cloaked figure moving slowly down the shadowed lane, leaning on a walking stick bent from olive wood. Her robe is rough, not the shimmering, gold-threaded kind you'd expect from a goddess, but the scratchy, "my cousin made this in a hurry" kind. Her hood drapes low over her face, hiding her eyes. She looks like any older woman heading home after a long day of trying to convince her grandchildren to stop arguing about whether goat cheese is superior to cow cheese. But the closer she comes, the more the air firms around her, as if every sound in Athens is pausing to listen. You step aside automatically, because the energy radiating from her cloaked form isn't hostile, it's ancient. Heavy. The kind of presence that makes you wonder if you should bow or run, or just pretend you suddenly turned into a decorative lamp. Athena is here. In disguise, yes, but that doesn't hide the truth from the nerves prickling under your skin. You can sense the sharp, clear wisdom pouring off her like cool water. She moves with that effortless, low-gravity grace only immortals can manage, where every step seems deliberate and inevitable. If she tripped on a stone, the stone would probably apologize. She pauses at the corner of Arachne Street and tilts her head slightly, as though tasting the night. You can almost imagine her hearing every tiny thread snapping under Arachne's fingers inside that workshop, the mortal skill calling to her like a challenge wrapped in silk. Athena taps her walking stick once on the stones. Just once. Quiet, but confident. A sound that feels like it understands strategy better than most generals. There's your mainstream historical fact. In many classical texts, Athena frequently takes mortal disguises to test humans, sometimes to protect them, sometimes to judge them, and sometimes just to check who's about to embarrass themselves in front of Olympus. She's the original surprise performance evaluator. Still, there's a weird fringe belief, passed down mostly in rural Greek villages, that Athena's disguises always left tiny clues, an owl feather tucked behind an ear, the scent of olive groves in her wake, even a faint shimmer around the edges of her silhouette. Historians still argue whether these details came from early oral storytelling or were added later by poets trying to make their versions sound more mystical.
But tonight?
Tonight you swear you catch the faint perfume of crushed olive leaves drifting from her cloak. She continues toward Arachne's home, and you follow, quietly, because following a disguised goddess loudly is one of those choices no philosopher would defend. Her sandals whisper over the stone, and she stops directly before Arachne's workshop door. She lifts her hand, not youthful, not smooth, but convincingly lined and worn with age, and knocks. Inside, you hear Arachne pause.
Just barely.
The loom's rhythm stops mid-breath. She stands, stretching her back and wiping her hands on her tunic. She doesn't sound annoyed, exactly. More like someone who's already exhausted from a long day of weaving and now has to entertain a visitor who will probably comment on the mess. Arachne opens the door. You slip in with Athena's silent presence, like a shadow dragging another shadow. The workshop feels different now, smaller, colder, like the threads themselves have tightened in anticipation. Arachne blinks at the cloaked woman, curiosity wrinkling her forehead. "My child," Athena says softly, her voice warm and calm. Too calm, like it's floating on a deeper current. "Your work is spoken of all over Lydia. They say no mortal alive matches your skill." Arachne perks up slightly. Praise is delicious, but when it lands exactly where your pride sits, it tastes like honey on hot bread. But Athena continues, "It is said, by many, that your gift must come from the goddess of craft herself."
Ah,
There it is. The bait.
the test.
The divine nudge. Arachne's lips twitch, annoyed. My work is my own, she says evenly. No goddess guides my shuttle. A lovely sentence. Dangerous sentence. Like telling a storm, actually, I think I can outrun you on foot. The disguised Athena steps deeper into the workshop, examining the tapestries hanging on the wall. You follow her gaze to scenes woven with uncanny detail, sea gods shimmering, nymphs dancing, mortals fishing beside reeds that look like they're swaying in a breeze you can't feel. Athena's eyes linger on each thread, absorbing every talent-saturated stitch. Finally, she turns back, the hood shadowing her expression. My dear, she says gently, one should not challenge the gods. Pride clouds a mind as easily as fog covers a harbor. Arachne's chin lifts just a little, but you feel the tension snap through the room like someone plucked a tight string. Let Athena challenge me, then, she says. Let her come. I fear no test. You inhale sharply because wow, she actually said it, out loud, to Athena, who is standing right there, literally within arm's reach, wearing the easiest to see through disguise in mythological history. One joke slips through your mind. If there were divine HR departments, this would be the exact moment to fill out an incident report. Athena doesn't respond immediately. She lets the silence stretch, weave, tighten. Her hood lowers further until you can no longer see her mouth. And then with a smooth, quiet gesture, like someone removing a winter coat, she lifts the hood back. The disguise dissolves.
Fades.
Falls away like threads sliding from a blade. Golden light glows from her hair. Her eyes sharpen into storm-gray clarity. Her posture straightens into the unshakable perfection of a goddess who makes empires tremble with a thought. The temperature in the room drops by a breath.
And you?
You suddenly feel very tiny, very mortal, and very glad you left your ego at home tonight. Arachne's face drains of color, her mouth opening slightly.
Shock. Fear. Awe.
A cocktail of, oh no, what have I done? Athena, she whispers, and the goddess replies in a voice made of calm thunder, you called me. That invisible cord between them pulls as taut as a drawn bowstring. And you understand, the challenge has begun, even before the first thread is cast. The air inside Arachne's workshop doesn't just tense, it solidifies. It's like the walls lean inward to listen, the threads on the loom shiver, and even the dust motes freeze mid-float, afraid to drift between goddess and mortal. Athena stands there, fully revealed, radiating that serene but terrifying calm only immortals can achieve. Arachne swallows, and you feel it in your own throat like you accidentally gulped a pebble. You don't move. Nobody moves. Except the candle flame near the loom, which flickers wildly as if trying to escape the situation entirely. Athena takes one step forward, quiet, measured, but it lands with the soft authority of a judge entering a courtroom. You claimed no goddess taught you, she says, her voice even. Not angry, not mocking, just clear enough to leave no space for misunderstanding. And you invited me to test you. Arachne's hands twitch at her sides, fingers curling like she's still gripping a shuttle. She could fall to her knees right now, apologize, beg forgiveness. That would be the logical, survival-oriented choice. But pride is a tricky beast, especially when you've spent your whole life proving yourself against every limitation thrown at you. I did, Arachne answers, chin lifting again, less boldly than before, but enough to show she hasn't cracked. Athena nods slightly, the corner of her mouth tightening in something that's not quite a smile. More like, very well. You said it. Now stand by it. She gestures around the cramped room. Your talent is undeniable. I came to see if humility matched it. But since you insist on a challenge. Her eyes sweep over the loom, the threads hanging like frozen waterfalls, the half-finished tapestry glowing under lamplight. Then we will have one. Arachne inhales sharply. You do too, because apparently you're emotionally tethered to her survival now. Outside, an owl hoots, soft, cautious, almost like it's signaling the city. Something big is happening. Everyone pretend you're asleep. Athena walks past Arachne, moving to the center of the workshop floor. Her presence changes the room's geometry. Everything seems to align itself toward her, the way iron filings leap into pattern around a magnet. "We will each weave a tapestry," she announces. "A test of skill, truth, and artistry." Arachne nods, shoulders pulled back. "Then I will weave what I know." "And I," Athena says, "will weave what is." There's your mainstream historical fact. Weaving contests in ancient Greek culture were sometimes considered sacred trials, ways to honor the gods through craftsmanship. They weren't common, and no one in their right mind would ever challenge a deity, but they did happen in ceremonial forms. This situation, though? This is the kind of contest bards would sing about for centuries, mostly so mortals learn not to provoke divine artisans. As the tension settles, you notice something odd, small glittering specks drifting around Athena's hands like dust catching moonlight. A fringe detail? Some old regional traditions claim that when Athena prepared to weave, her fingertips sparked with invisible energy, the same kind used to craft her fabled aegis. Historians still argue whether this comes from symbolic storytelling or whether ancient priests actually described witnessing these tiny lights during rituals. Whatever the truth is, you definitely see a shimmer now. Arachne walks to her loom, her original beloved loom, and adjusts the tension rods with slightly shaking fingers. Athena, however, extends her hand and simply creates one.
Right there.
Threads form out of air, aligning themselves into a perfect frame of polished olive wood, each strand glowing faintly like starlight caught in spider silk. You mutter under your breath, "Well, that's fair," before immediately regretting your sarcasm in a room with a goddess. Athena pretends not to hear your commentary.
Probably.
Arachne, to her credit, doesn't flinch. If anything, she seems more determined, as if the divine showmanship only fans her competitive fire. She threads her shuttle, checks her warp, and exhales through her nose. The room vibrates with quiet expectation. Athena speaks first. The rules are simple: effort, truth, and skill. No deceit in pattern. No shortcuts in thread. You can't help smiling at the idea of divine contest rules sounding exactly like ancient teacher instructions. Arachne nods. "Then let the weaving begin." Athena raises her hand. The candle flames steady. The workshop grows warmer, brighter, like the air holds its breath and glows from within. And then, simultaneously, they start. Athena moves with impossible precision. Each gesture flows like water sculpting itself into new forms. The shuttle in her hand hums, darting so fast it leaves traces of pale gold light. Her loom responds to her like a living creature, threads shifting, adjusting, welcoming each divine command. Arachne moves differently. Mortal fast, mortal fierce. Her strokes aren't effortless. They're labored, sweating, intense, the way a master athlete strains to reach their limit. But there's something in her technique that the goddess doesn't replicate. Something deeply human and sharp. Innovation through struggle. And for a moment, the playing field doesn't look so uneven. You shift from side to side, watching both looms. The room pulses like a heartbeat, Athena's divine calm blended with Arachne's fiery determination. Arachne's expression shifts between fierce concentration and something like exhilaration. Athena's face? Serene. Focused. But you catch a flicker of surprise every now and then, like she didn't expect Arachne to keep pace this long. You wonder whether the goddess regrets accepting the contest. Or perhaps she relishes it, a reminder of the thrill mortals can spark when they push themselves beyond ordinary bounds. Threads fly. Patterns bloom. Athena's tapestry grows first, a shimmering scene of gods in triumph, golden chariots blazing across the sky, Zeus raising his lightning bolt, Poseidon stirring oceans, Artemis running with moonlit grace. Each detail so perfect it feels carved from clarity itself. Arachne's tapestry grows slower, but not weaker. Her colors are deeper, her patterns bold, her imagery sharp as truth spoken without fear. You feel sweat bead on your own temples, even though you're not the one weaving. You're just vibing in the corner, hoping nobody asks you to hold a thread. A thought crosses your mind. One joke that feels inevitable. This is basically the world's first craft-based reality show. But you bite your tongue. Probably smart. Outside, you hear whispers rising from the street as townspeople sense something happening. They press to doorways and windows, drawn by the invisible hum rolling through Arachne's walls. You stand between a goddess and a mortal, watching creation spark on two looms at once. The tension tightens with every thread, every shuttle pass, every glance Arachne sneaks at Athena, half defiance, half awe. And as the final inches of pattern form, the air thickens with the knowledge that the contest is nearly ready to burst into its true shape. Two looms, two visions, two wills colliding. One challenge, now fully alive. The moment both weavers hit their rhythm, the workshop no longer feels like a simple room. It becomes a kind of living instrument, vibrating with two utterly different energies clashing and curling around each other. You stand near the back wall, absolutely still because even breathing too loudly feels like it might break something important. The looms themselves begin to creak and sigh, as if they're waking up under the weight of what's being demanded of them. Athena's divine loom glows faintly, each beam of olive wood warming with an inner light. The threads stretching across it, thin as hair, bright as sunlit frost, hum with a resonance that tingles in your bones. They vibrate at a pitch you can't quite hear but definitely feel, like standing too close to a massive bell that hasn't fully stopped ringing. Arachne's loom, meanwhile, looks sturdier, earthier, made of mortal woodworking and stubborn craftsmanship, but it starts to thrum too, rising to meet its opponent like a loyal friend refusing to be outdone. You inhale sharply when the first strand of Athena's tapestry fully reveals itself. A swirling golden arc folds into place, the beginning of a scene depicting the gods' triumph over the giants in the Gigantomachy. Historically speaking, depictions of this famous myth were incredibly common in Greek art. Vase painters, sculptors, and muralists loved showing the gods absolutely demolishing their oversized opponents. You recognize Athena's characteristic armor forming in her threads, the crested helmet, the gleaming aegis with the Gorgon face, the steady spear bracing her stance. It's like watching a fresco appear out of mist. But the quirky fringe tidbit weaving itself into your mind? Some older folktales claim Athena never fought with brute strength during that battle. She supposedly defeated the giant Enceladus by simply outsmarting him, using misdirected shadows and illusions to trick him into stumbling. Historians still argue whether this odd footnote came from a lost poem or someone in a rural village trying to spice up their campfire stories. Yet here in the tapestry, you see shades of that cleverness. Athena's figure is depicted not just striking a blow but orchestrating movement like a conductor guiding chaos into surrender. Arachne glances sideways, just once, and then focuses intensely on her own loom. Her fingers flick from thread to thread, choosing colors with lightning instinct, deep crimsons for passion, emeralds for envy, blues for the skies no mortal can touch. Slowly, her tapestry forms into something bolder than Athena's grandeur. She doesn't depict gods victorious or noble. She weaves scenes of their questionable moments. You feel an uncomfortable laugh bubble in your throat. This girl is brave or reckless, in ways that make both mortals and gods twitch. Her tapestry begins with Zeus, not as a thunder-hurling king but disguised as a swan in his infamous pursuit of Leda. The detail Arachne manages is almost unsettling. The swan's plumage looks soft enough to touch, but Leda's expression, caught between surprise and dread, reveals a truth Greek myth rarely sugarcoats. Arachne weaves another scene beside it. Apollo chasing Daphne, her limbs mid-transformation, bark curling around her toes as she flees his divine advances. The contrast between the looms is so sharp it stings. Divine glory versus divine hypocrisy. Two truths woven at once. Athena's expression remains serene, but you see her shoulders tighten the tiniest amount. You wonder if she's more offended by Arachne's audacity or impressed by her accuracy. A townsperson outside the window gasps softly. More shuffle closer. The crowd is growing. And inside, something incredible happens. The looms begin to breathe. Not literally, of course. Not like lungs, but they exhale warmth, inhale tension, respond to the motion of the weavers with a sentience you can't rationalize. The oldest Athenians believed looms held fragments of household spirits, tiny protective forces sheltering the threads. Most scholars chalk that up to poetic metaphor, but right now? Right now you're not convinced these beams of wood aren't paying very close attention. Arachne's loom creaks with a deep, resolute groan. Athena's answers with a crystalline chiming noise, like the soft ring of a distant lyre string. The whole workshop turns into an orchestra of competing sounds: mortal wood, divine shimmer, human breath, goddess calm. You step closer to Arachne's side, not to interfere, but because the rawness of her tapestry pulls you in. Her seams are fearless. Too fearless. She weaves Zeus disguising himself as a bull, as a shower of gold, as anything he needed to be to pursue mortals. She weaves Poseidon flooding towns out of spite. She weaves Hera punishing innocent women. Each story is threaded with beauty, but also accusation. Arachne's talent is astonishing. But her boldness? Absolutely illegal on at least 3 cosmic levels. Athena's last woven scene shifts into clarity, a portrait of Mount Olympus, shining like a crown atop the world. The gods look radiant, untouchable, their harmony depicted in careful detail. You can't deny its magnificence. The divine tapestry radiates order, beauty, perfection, but also distance,
Control.
You catch Athena glancing, not at Arachne, but at the mortal girl's tapestry. And for a flicker of a second, you swear you see something like unease. Not rage. Not yet. Just the tiniest spark of recognition. This mortal is weaving something dangerously true. The air thickens again. Arachne wipes sweat from her forehead. Athena continues with her movement, so smooth it looks like she's weaving inside a dream. You feel your heart thudding a little too loudly. Someone behind you murmurs, "The looms, they're alive." You're tempted to whisper, "Same," because your anxiety level just hit maximum thread tension. Arachne suddenly switches techniques, overshot weaving blending with fine pickup patterns. Her shuttle darts in ways you've never seen. Mortals shouldn't weave like this. Even Athena pauses, just barely, at the change in rhythm. Threads on both looms tighten. The structure shifts. The room trembles along with the wooden floors. And you realize, these looms aren't just waking up. They're choosing sides. And neither side feels particularly safe for the mortal standing between them. The weavers push forward, pulling fate tighter with every pass of their shuttles. Soon, something will have to give. Something will snap. And you just hope it's not the universe itself. The moment Arachne shifts the pattern, you feel the air pressure in the workshop tilt, like someone opened a door to a storm you can't see. The threads respond instantly, trembling as if they're listening to some secret frequency only the two weavers can hear. You draw a slow breath, trying not to let your nerves show, but honestly, your pulse is doing gymnastics and the looms seem fully aware of it. Athena is the first to react, not with panic, not even with annoyance, but with this barely perceptible narrowing of her eyes. It's the kind of look your math teacher used to give when someone solved a problem in a way they weren't supposed to, but still got it right. She respects what Arachne just did. And that's exactly what makes the tension so sharp. Because respect mixed with divine pride, that's basically fuel for cosmic fireworks. Arachne's new rhythm is blistering. Her fingers move like she's been waiting her whole life for this exact moment to ignite. The pattern shifts into something more fluid, more dangerous. Not just scenes now, narratives. Her tapestry becomes a long, unbroken ribbon of divine misconduct, stitched with a precision that borders on defiance. She adds a new image, Athena herself turning Medusa into a gorgon. Historically, artists often avoided this scene. It was messy, morally complicated, and the kind of thing temples didn't want to commission. But Arachne doesn't care. She depicts Medusa as a mortal maiden, hair flowing, eyes soft, posture frightened, as Athena's divine power wraps around her like storm wind. You swear you hear someone in the growing crowd whisper, "She shouldn't weave that." You want to whisper back, "Honestly? Neither should you breathe right now." Athena continues weaving with her same serene pace, but you sense a slight softening in the room around her, like her divine presence is whispering calming instructions to the loom itself. Her tapestry now expands into a breathtaking panorama of cosmic order, celestial patterns swirling above Mount Olympus, rivers flowing with impossible symmetry, constellations forming perfect arcs. And sure enough, here comes your historical fact. Ancient Greek astronomers really did believe Athena guided the layout of the stars, not literally but symbolically, her wisdom representing the order that kept the heavens steady. It fits neatly into the divine tapestry, where everything gleams with purpose. But the quirky tidbit sneaks in on the back of your mind. In one obscure fragment of a lost play, someone actually wrote that Athena invented the loom not for weaving, but to communicate with celestial beings by vibrating threads like cosmic radio wires. Historians still argue whether this idea was meant seriously or satirically, but the thought pops up now as Athena's loom pulses with a faint silver glow. Maybe it's tuning into something beyond mortal hearing. Arachne's loom, on the other hand, reacts more physically. The wooden frame creaks again, louder this time, like it's straining under the honesty she's forcing into it. Her shuttle flies. Her jaw tightens. You notice she's shaking slightly, but not from fear. From adrenaline. From fury. From the thrill of proving herself. At the far end of her tapestry, she begins weaving a scene so bold you actually take a gentle step back before you even realize you're moving, the gods being judged by mortals. The moment the first outlines appear, tiny humans holding scrolls while Zeus sits uncomfortably on a throne, Athena stops. Fully stops. Her shuttle freezes midair. The sound drops out of the room like someone snuffed out the world's last candle. The crowd behind you goes silent in a way that tells you they're all mentally writing their wills. Even the looms stop breathing. You look at Athena. She isn't furious. Not yet. Her expression is more like disappointment. Deep, layered, ancient disappointment, the kind a parent feels when their kid draws a crayon mural of dinosaurs eating the family dog on the living room wall. A quiet, heavy sigh escapes her, barely audible but enough to make your spine go rigid. "Child," she says softly, but her voice carries through the workshop with divinity woven into every syllable. "You are skilled beyond measure. But this path leads nowhere." Arachne doesn't stop weaving. Not even for a heartbeat. She doesn't even look up. "If the gods behave poorly," she murmurs, "why is it wrong to show it?" Her voice trembles around the edges, not with fear, but with conviction, sharpened by years of people doubting her, dismissing her, shrinking her worth down to the narrow size of a loom. This moment, she's weaving her truth in front of a goddess, and she would rather burn than break. Athena sets her shuttle down. The divine threads shimmer, waiting, suspended. The workshop has become too small for the moment growing inside it. Arachne's tapestry expands again, a final scene forming, a mortal woman weaving under the gaze of jealous gods. It's clearly herself, unapologetically herself, woven into the fabric of defiance. You feel a swell in your throat. It's beautiful and unbelievably reckless. Athena steps toward her, slow, controlled, her footsteps barely disturbing the floorboards. You've heard myths claim the goddess of wisdom never acts without reason. But you've also heard the fringe stories, once told in whispers, that say Athena's mercy is deep but not infinite. Historians still argue whether her punishment of mortals was meant to teach or to dominate, to protect them from hubris or protect Olympus from criticism. And right now, that debate feels very, very personal. Athena stands beside Arachne, looking down at the tapestry. Then, with a gentleness so unexpected it makes you shiver, she lifts her hand and touches a single thread. The entire loom shudders. Arachne's tapestry ripples like water touched by wind. And Athena whispers, "You leave me no choice." You feel the universe lean forward, waiting to see what happens when divine judgment meets mortal brilliance. And the looms brace themselves. The moment Athena's fingers brush that single thread, the entire workshop reacts like it's been struck by silent lightning. The air tightens, the floorboards tremble, and your lungs suddenly feel like they've forgotten how to function. You try to inhale quietly, respectfully even, but the atmosphere is so charged that your heartbeat feels like it's clanging off the walls. Arachne jerks her hands back from the loom, eyes wide, as the fabric under Athena's touch begins to pulse with a faint glow. Not a warm glow, not a divine sparkle. This is a warning glow, the kind you'd see in movies right before someone pushes a big red button labeled "Do Not Touch." If you could slip out unnoticed right now, you probably would, but unfortunately your legs have collectively decided to stage a rebellion. Athena studies the tapestry in silence, and the quiet stretches long enough for you to start panicking in real time. You're half convinced this is the moment the goddess transforms Arachne into a decorative cautionary tale, or worse, gives you a personal job in the underworld. You really don't want that. The dental plan is terrible. Finally, Athena speaks softly, almost sadly. "You possess a gift," she murmurs. "One few mortals will ever match. Your skills should lift the world, not tear it." Arachne's chin rises. "Truth isn't tearing it," she whispers. "It's what holds it together." The crowd behind you exhales, but nervously, like a single wrong exhale might cause an earthquake. And honestly, the way the looms twitch and creak, that might not be an exaggeration. Athena closes her eyes, and the tension in the room thickens again. You can practically taste it like metal or electricity, or that awful sense you get when you realize your phone is at 2% and you're nowhere near an outlet. You brace yourself, but instead of fury, something else unfolds. The thread at Athena's fingertip begins to unravel, not violently, not destructively, but gracefully. It slips out of the tapestry like fog dispersing, leaving no tear behind. The next thread follows, then another. Arachne gasps and reaches instinctively to stop it, but the loom shifts beneath her touch and gently pushes her hands away. You watch, transfixed, as Athena unwinds the final scene Arachne wove, her boldest one, the judgment of the gods. The image dims, fades, dissolves into loose thread. Arachne's breath shakes. You can't erase the truth. Athena looks at her, not coldly, but with a deep, unshakable sadness. Child, I am not erasing truth. I am shielding you from consequences you do not yet understand. Which, to be fair, is exactly the kind of vague divine warning that makes your stomach drop.
Great. Perfect.
No stress at all. With the gentleness of someone handling an infant bird, Athena lifts the final unraveled thread and places it carefully on the loom's frame. Then she turns to Arachne. Your skill is undeniable, she says. Your passion is powerful. But wisdom, her voice softens, is knowing when truth must be spoken and when it will only destroy. Arachne swallows hard. If you punish me, then do it. But don't pretend it's about wisdom. That sentence hangs in the air like a sword suspended on a single hair. Athena's expression shifts, only slightly, but enough to make you instinctively straighten like you're in trouble too. She steps closer to Arachne, and now you see it. Beneath the calm, a deep, crackling frustration, the kind that comes from watching someone brilliant sprint toward a cliff while insisting they're fine. For a mortal, Athena says quietly, humility is protection, not chains. The crowd murmurs. Someone behind you whispers an old story, that Athena once helped humans build their first chariots. Historically speaking, she's credited with tons of inventions. Plows, ships, even the flute. The woman practically had a patent portfolio. A goddess of civilization who taught mortals how to thrive. But there's also a strange little fringe myth the older villagers like to tell. The one where Athena wove a tapestry so powerful it predicted the fall of Troy, only for the prophecy to unravel when someone touched the wrong thread. Historians still argue whether this tale was metaphor, mistranslation, or someone trying to blame their failed harvest on divine textile foreshadowing. But you think about it now as Athena gazes at Arachne. A tapestry isn't just art to her. It's power. It's truth arranged, controlled, balanced. Arachne's tapestry was none of those things. It was raw truth, heated, unfiltered, jagged. Athena steps back from the loom, as if giving the moment space to breathe. She lifts her hand again, not for punishment, but for something stranger. The very air ripples around her fingers. Threads, loose ones from both looms, lift from the ground and float upward like tiny silver snakes.
They twist. They coil.
They knot themselves into a small sphere of shimmering fiber in Athena's palm. You've never seen divine weaving energy before, but you're pretty sure this is the textile equivalent of a nuclear reactor warming up. Arachne's eyes widen. You brace yourself against the wall. Even the floorboards seem to tense, like they're worried about their structural integrity. Athena holds the glowing bundle between them. "This is your choice," she says softly. "Your gift protected. If you accept guidance, if you choose balance over defiance, you may weave beside gods, not against them." Arachne stares at the sphere. The threads inside swirl like restless stars. For one fragile moment, you think she might accept. But then her jaw sets. Her hands curl into fists. And she lifts her chin once more, fiery and unbreakable. "I don't want your protection," she whispers. "I want my truth." Athena's fingers close around the glowing sphere. The light extinguishes. And the silence that follows is so absolute, so suffocating, so brittle, that you feel the universe itself hold its breath. Then Athena says the words you hoped, prayed, you wouldn't hear. "Then you leave me no choice." The loom snaps taut. The air shivers. Arachne flinches as golden threads rise like tiny serpents. And you realize the punishment is coming, not out of cruelty, but out of inevitability. And nothing in this room, not the crowd, not the trembling wood, not even you, can stop it now. Athena doesn't move at first. She just stands there, perfectly still, as if she's waiting for a cosmic stopwatch to tick down. The golden threads hovering around her glow brighter, warming the air until you feel sweat gathering at the back of your neck. Arachne, tense and trembling, stares at the goddess like she's bracing for lightning. And you, poor mortal, innocent bystander, unwilling witness, are silently calculating how fast you could roll yourself under a table without drawing divine attention. The answer: not fast enough. The golden threads finally quiver, rising higher, swirling into a loose spiral above Athena's palm. They're beautiful, in the way stars are beautiful, beautiful enough to distract you from the part where they look like they're about to rewrite someone's destiny. A faint hum begins to echo through the room, so low you feel it in your ribs more than you hear it. Arachne's loom trembles. Its wooden frame bends inward slightly, as though it's bowing or flinching. Athena raises her hand. "Arachne," she says quietly, "may your hands never forget what they've created." That sounds gentle. Too gentle. It's the kind of tone a parent uses right before taking the Wi-Fi password hostage. But the hum deepens, and you realize this isn't gentleness. It's solemnity. The kind that comes right before a door closes forever. Arachne opens her mouth to speak. Maybe to apologize. Maybe to shout. But before the words can form, the spiral of golden threads dives toward her. You gasp. The crowd gasps. Even the looms groan as if protesting. The threads wrap around Arachne, not painfully, not violently, but with a slow, inevitable tightening, like vines claiming a trellis. Her arms are pulled close to her sides, her fingers spread helplessly. She looks at Athena, panic flickering through her eyes. "Please," she whispers. But the transformation has already begun. Her skin glints with a faint, unnatural sheen, as though tiny filaments are weaving themselves through it. Her limbs grow lighter, trembling. A strange rustling sound fills the air, like parchment being crumpled in slow motion. You realize, with awful clarity, that Arachne is shrinking. Not dramatically at first, just subtly, as if someone gently lowered the resolution of her existence. The threads tighten. Her posture curves inward. Her hair lifts and unfurls, settling into something finer, more delicate, like spun silk. A murmur echoes through the crowd. "No, no." But Athena watches silently, her expression unreadable. Historically, the earliest Greek versions of the myth describe Athena transforming Arachne into the first spider so she could continue weaving forever. It was considered poetic justice, punishment, and mercy twisted together. Some ancient scholars argued that spiders were sacred to Athena because they mirrored divine weaving. But here, watching it unfold, you feel none of the poetic neatness those old storytellers claimed. It's raw. It's painful. It's much too real. And then comes the quirky tidbit that pops into your mind at the worst possible moment. In one fringe Roman commentary, some scholar claimed Arachne didn't become a spider at all. She became the spirit inhabiting webs, moving them with her will. He even insisted she whispered advice to mortal weavers. Historians still argue whether this was metaphor, misinterpretation, or a scholar deeply sleep-deprived from cataloging scrolls all night. But looking at Arachne now, half mortal, half something other, you can't help thinking maybe those fringe scholars weren't entirely wrong. Arachne tries to move her hands, but her fingers have already grown thin and jointed, bending into angles that make your stomach flip. She stumbles backward, but her legs buckle as they narrow, splitting into segments that shimmer like silk threads in sunlight. Her breath grows faster, shorter, until it isn't breath anymore, just a faint clicking sound. Athena steps forward. And here, for the first time, you see regret. She kneels beside the shrinking girl, lowering herself with the kind of reverence you'd expect for a fallen hero, not a punished mortal. Her eyes soften. Her hand hovers over Arachne's back, but never quite touches. I warned you, Athena whispers. Hubris is a loom that unravels its weaver. The words sting. Not just for Arachne, who is now small enough that the threads binding her fall away like oversized ropes, but for you too. There's something deeply human about the moment. A brilliant person punished not for their talent, but for the way their truth threatened the powerful. Arachne's voice, faint and warped, slips into the air like a fraying thread. I only wanted to show the truth. Athena closes her eyes. And you did. Too clearly. The final change sweeps over Arachne like a cold breeze. Her body condenses, softens, reshapes. 2 new legs sprout. Then 2 more. Then the last pair. 8 in total, long and trembling. Her eyes multiply, glistening like tiny black gems. Her torso shrinks further, compact and lightweight. And suddenly, she's no longer a girl bent under divine power. She's a spider, small, delicate, trembling beside the loom she once commanded. The crowd stumbles back in shock. A woman shrieks and covers her mouth. A man crosses himself reflexively. You grip the edge of a table because your knees decide they no longer want to participate in this narrative. Arachne, the girl who defied gods, the weaver whose hands crafted truths too sharp for Olympus, now crawls unsteadily onto the abandoned loom. Her web, thin and shimmering, begins to form automatically, instinctively. Her entire body moves with the muscle memory of creation. Athena rises slowly. For your gift, she murmurs, you will weave for all time. But not as a mortal. It doesn't feel cruel. It feels tragic. The kind of tragedy where everyone loses something. Athena turns to the watching crowd, who immediately bow their heads. Even you instinctively duck your chin, because eye contact with a goddess during a punishment feels like the fastest way to get yourself turned into a houseplant. Let this be a lesson, Athena says. Skill without humility becomes destruction. But there's a flicker in her expression, barely visible, that makes you think she isn't entirely convinced of her own words. She glances once more at the trembling little spider perched on the loom. Something like sorrow trembles behind her eyes. Then she steps back. The golden light around her fades, and the goddess of wisdom disappears in a soft gust of wind that makes the silk threads tremble. Silence settles over the workshop like dust. Arachne, tiny, fragile, but still weaving, moves along the beam, spinning her first web. And you realize the transformation isn't the end of the tension. It's the beginning of a very different kind of chaos. One where the gods aren't the only audience paying attention. Because a former mortal, now small enough to hide in any crack, any corner, any forgotten space, has just gained the ability to move unseen. And she still remembers everything. The workshop is so quiet after Athena vanishes that you half expect someone to whisper, "Cut," like you've all just been filming the most emotionally exhausting scene in cinematic history. But no one speaks. No one moves. Even the dust motes seem to pause midair, like they're waiting for permission to fall again. Arachne's new form, a trembling, jewel-eyed spider no larger than a thumbnail, clings to the edge of the loom. Her legs twitch uncertainly, each movement hesitant, like she's still figuring out how to exist inside this strange, delicate body. And honestly, you're still figuring out how to exist inside your perfectly normal human body after witnessing that transformation. A woman in the crowd whimpers softly. A man mutters a quick prayer. Someone else clears their throat with the exact energy of a person trying not to pass out. You consider joining them, but your legs still feel like soft noodles, so you just hold on to the nearest table and hope your spine doesn't resign from its job. Arachne moves at last. One tentative step, then another, her thread glands releasing a faint gleam of silk behind her. The thread catches the light, shimmering like moonlit water. It's eerie, beautiful, heartbreaking. You remember a historical fact then. One whispered in old Greek households, spiders were seen as omens of both luck and mischief. People believed a spider on your loom meant the fates were watching, which was either wonderful or terrible depending on whether your thread tension was behaving that day. It's strange how such an innocent belief now feels heavier. Then there's the fringe tidbit. A bizarre pseudo-philosophical text claimed that spiders secretly controlled destiny by weaving metaphysical webs across the world, pulling strings to nudge events. Historians still argue whether this was satire or the result of someone eating questionable olives. But you glance at Arachne, tiny, trembling, furious, and a cold shiver slides down your spine. Because right now, the idea of fate being woven by a very bitter former human feels weirdly plausible. The crowd begins slowly backing away, respectfully, cautiously, like they're trying not to startle the divine punished creature whose entire life just collapsed in the span of 60 seconds. You inch closer, not too close, because you have a very healthy appreciation for not being smited, but close enough to see Arachne's web forming. She spins instinctively now, her new body guiding her motions. The silk is impossibly fine, thinner than hair, but strong, glinting like woven moonlight. And here's the shocking thing. It is beautiful. It's heartbreaking, yes. Unfair, definitely. But beautiful. Her artistry didn't vanish with her humanity. It just changed shape. Arachne pauses mid-spin as though she senses you watching. Her cluster of small, glistening eyes turns toward you. You freeze. Every instinct in your body screams at you to run or bow, or maybe just faint dramatically to avoid responsibility. Instead, she crawls a little closer along the loom's beam. Your breath catches. Is she approaching you? She doesn't leap. She doesn't attack. She doesn't cast some ancient spider curse that turns you into a yarn ball. She just stops close enough that you can see the delicate patterns etched into her tiny body, a natural tapestry, spirals and lines and shapes as intricate as anything she wove as a human. Arachne, you whisper without thinking, as though she can still understand language. Maybe she can. Maybe her mind is unchanged. Maybe she hears the world now in vibrations instead of words. She lifts one spindly front leg, a silent greeting, or a question, or maybe just a trembling instinct, but it feels deliberate. You swallow hard. You're standing next to a goddess-punished spider who used to be a teenage weaving prodigy and might now be capable of crafting webs that shame the loom of Olympus. Every instinct says this is wildly above your pay grade, but you don't step back. The crowd notices the interaction and collectively decides to exit the workshop as quietly as possible. Footsteps shuffle. Wood creaks. A door clicks shut. And suddenly you're alone, with Arachne and the two looms still quivering from everything they witnessed. The quiet is almost too much. So you do what any sleep-deprived mortal in a mythological crisis would do. You start talking. You don't deserve this, you whisper, voice barely audible. You weren't wrong. Arachne twitches. A tiny movement, but in the silence, it feels monumental. You think about Athena's face, the regret hidden under duty, the frustration woven into sadness. You think about Arachne's defiance, her brilliance, her refusal to accept divine censorship. You think about how truth shouldn't be a punishable offense, even when it's inconvenient. And then you think about the debate scholars still have, whether Athena's punishment was meant to protect mortals from pride or to protect Olympus from scrutiny. Because nothing about what you just witnessed was clear-cut. It was messy. It was human. It was divine. It was everything myths try to smooth over, but never quite do. Arachne finishes a small spiral in her web and steps back, her tiny body shaking. Is she exhausted? Afraid? Furious? Maybe all three. You've definitely felt all three today yourself. You kneel slowly, giving her space. What happens now? She doesn't answer, obviously, but she does something unexpected. She begins weaving again.
Faster. Smoother.
The silk flows from her effortlessly, forming an expanding pattern. Geometric shapes, curves, arcs. It's deliberate, purposeful.
She's not just making a web.
She's crafting a message. You lean closer, heart thumping. The design grows clearer, and you feel your stomach flip. It's the same pattern Arachne wove into the final scene of her tapestry, the scene of mortals judging the gods. Only now smaller, hidden, spun in silk instead of yarn. You exhale shakily. You're not done, are you? She freezes for a second, then resumes weaving. And that's when the fear hits. Not fear of Arachne, or of Athena returning, or of spider webs suddenly achieving sentience. It's fear of what happens when someone brilliant decides they'll keep telling the truth, even when the world punishes them for it. Arachne, tiny and relentless, keeps weaving. You realize you're witnessing the beginning of a rebellion, not loud, not violent, but woven in silk, in secret, impossible to silence. The looms creak softly, almost as if they approve. And Arachne's tiny legs move with growing confidence. She may have lost her form. She has not lost her voice. You keep walking with that same cautious rhythm you've been using ever since this whole divine loom detour began, your footsteps tracing soft arcs across a slope of sun-baked stone. The air is close and warm, buzzing faintly like someone left a giant cosmic phone on vibrate, and you catch the shimmer of Athena's all gliding ahead in a wide circle, as if scouting the path. The terrain here is different, steeper, stranger, shaped by centuries of whispered defiance and quiet revenge. You can practically feel the ghosts of old rivalries picking at your ankles. Arachne's voice drifts through your memory, thin as thread, pulling you toward a narrow terrace where the rocks angle upward like a folded crease in an enormous, discarded textile. You swallow once because the incline looks like it was designed by someone who hates ankles. Athena isn't here in person, not yet, but her presence lingers like the chill of marble floors in an ancient temple. And you feel yourself stepping into a moment where threads twist together, some bright, some burned at the edges. Historians still argue whether the myths around this ridge were ever tied to a real sanctuary or whether ancient storytellers simply needed a dramatic backdrop. Either way, the ground holds tension like a loom stretched too tight. Even the wind seems to walk on tiptoe. You reach the first ledge and notice an old carving half buried in dried moss, a spiraling pattern that scholars love to claim as evidence of early cult rituals. The mainstream fact here is that spiral motifs like these actually show up across Bronze Age Aegean sites, often linked to weaving or cycles of renewal. The quirky bit, because there's always a quirky bit, is the fringe belief that these spirals were secret maps leading to caches of impossible fabric, woven from threads kissed by moonlight. Honestly, if moonlight were a textile, half the influencers online would try to sell it for $299 a yard. As you climb, the sunlight cuts across the ridge in angled bars, illuminating little threads of spider silk stretching between rocks. The sight presses something between your ribs, a reminder of Arachne's lingering defiance, a soft marker of the strange truce she and Athena never quite finalized. The owl dips, hooting like it's trying to hurry you, which feels rude because your legs are already staging a protest. Each step gives you the unsettling sense that you're being weighed, not judged, just measured, like a bolt of fabric someone's considering for a very dramatic curtain. Far below, you see a narrow footpath winding away into a broken patch of olive trees. Their silver leaves flash brightly in the sun, almost as if the trees are trying to flag you down with tiny mirrors. You're struck by how still everything is until you hear it, a steady, rhythmic tapping. Not the tapping of footsteps or tools, but the faint clack-clack of wooden bars striking together. A loom. Or at least something that desperately wants you to think it's a loom. The sound pulses gently, completely out of place in this landscape, like someone misplaced a small workshop on the side of a cliff. You follow the sound around a bend, heart doing the anxious podcast listener thump. The ridge narrows, and you squeeze through a tight passage that smells faintly of iron and crushed herbs. You're greeted by a sudden swell of warm air, rising like the breath of some ancient creature. Then you see it, an opening in the rock wall, wide enough for 3 people, shadowed just enough to look intimidating in that you probably won't survive this if you trip sort of way. Not that you plan to.
Probably.
Inside the opening, the light softens. The stone ceiling pulls upward in uneven arches, each one decorated with faded lines that look like someone tried to doodle clouds or waves, or maybe the goddess herself mumbled a blessing across the cavern and left these patterns behind like afterimages. It's quiet here except for the persistent tapping echoing from deeper within. The air tastes of cool dust, the kind that gets in your nose, and reminds you of old libraries or forgotten attics. You walk carefully, one hand trailing the wall, because this cavern clearly didn't pass any sort of divine building inspection. Then, inexplicably, you start to feel a mild warmth radiating from your wrist. You glance down, half expecting to see a glowing smartwatch notification from Mythic Prime or something. But no, just your normal, unenchanted arm. You shake it once, chalking the sensation up to the cavern's weird microclimate or maybe the lingering startled cat energy from your earlier encounter with divine craftsmanship. A few steps later, the cavern widens abruptly, opening into a chamber shaped like an enormous overturned bowl. And right in the center of it stands a loom. Not a dusty relic, not a broken frame. No, this structure glows faintly, its wooden beams smoother than polished marble, its threads taut and shining like they're capturing sunlight from some unseen window. You blink twice, because the loom is moving. Alone. Weaving without hands. Its shuttle slides back and forth in tidy arcs, tapping the wood with each pass, exactly the rhythm you heard outside. Athena's handiwork. Or maybe her warning. You approach with the same energy you'd use to inspect a suspiciously humming toaster. The fabric forming on the loom's frame is shifting, colors sliding into place like reflections broken across water. You catch a glimpse of a pattern, a cliffside, 2 figures facing each other, threads of gold climbing through their shapes. You squint and realize the loom is weaving a memory, or a prophecy, or some inconvenient combination of both. The owl lands beside you, feathers puffed like it's proud of its supervisory role. Its round eyes fix on the loom, then swing back to you as if to say, "Yes, mortal, please keep up." You resist the urge to salute it, though the temptation is strong. There's a low hum beneath the chamber floor, subtle enough that you only notice when you step closer to the center. It feels like the whole cavern is vibrating with anticipation, or maybe irritation, depending on how the loom's day has been. You reach toward the threads but stop inches away, remembering that touching mysterious magical machinery generally ends with you being temporarily cursed or turned into something with too many legs. Still, you lean in, studying the weaving technique. A mainstream fact floats to mind. Ancient looms, especially upright ones like this, were central to daily life across the Greek world, often used communally in households. A fringe tidbit nudges in afterward. Some old storytellers claim divine looms could listen to the thoughts of mortals standing nearby, adjusting their patterns based on intention. Whether this is actually wisdom or ancient gossip is unclear, but you can't shake the feeling the loom is paying attention to you right now. The threads shift again and the image changes. Your breath catches. The loom is showing you something you haven't seen yet, but will.
Possibly.
Depending on how stubborn you get. The scene unfolding is sharp, detailed, full of motion. And in the center of it stands Athena, her expression not angry but calculating, like she's already several moves ahead of you in a game you didn't agree to play. You back up one small, careful step. The loom pauses, just for a heartbeat. Then the tapping resumes, soft, patient, relentless. You exhale slowly, knowing the next moment is going to unravel something. And you follow the owl's lead, stepping deeper into the chamber's glow, where the threads pull tight and the story tightens right along with them. You stand there for a long breath, the kind of breath that fills your chest all the way to the back of your spine, and then slowly sifts out again like dust shaken from an old tapestry. The enchanted loom keeps working, unbothered, unhurried, beating out its steady rhythm. And then, because apparently nothing in this cavern respects your blood pressure, the threads shift again, rippling like they caught a gust of wind, even though the air is still. You glance at the owl, hoping for reassurance, but it just blinks at you with that "don't look at me, I only work here" expression. Stepping away from the loom, you feel the ground tilt downward into a darker corridor, the rough stone warming slightly under your feet. It's a narrow path, just wide enough for a mortal with questionable decision-making skills, meaning you. The tapping of the loom fades behind you, replaced by a rising hum that sounds almost metallic, like coins rattling in a pouch or armor brushing against itself. Historians still argue whether this cavern complex was ever tied to early smithing cults or whether storytellers retrofitted the theory to make every myth look more interconnected. But right now, the metallic sound feels deliberate, almost welcoming. You ease forward, the ceiling dropping low enough that you tilt your head automatically, as if ducking will prevent concussions and divine wrath simultaneously. The owl swoops ahead, disappears around a bend, and reemerges perched on a jagged rock. It gives a small hoot, polite but firm, like a teacher reminding you that wandering off-topic isn't an option. The corridor dissolves into a wider platform, and the first thing you notice is the glow. Not golden, not fiery, but an eerie silver pulse that washes over the stones like moonlight on water. It comes from a cluster of crystalline threads hanging above a second loom, much smaller, much more erratic, like it was built by someone who got tired halfway through the instruction manual. The beams are crooked, the pegs uneven, and the warp threads hang slack in places. This definitely isn't Athena's work. This feels younger, wilder, mortal-made. And then a voice drifts from the shadows.
Soft.
Defensive. Familiar. Arachne. You freeze, and the owl bobs its head in a "yep, you heard right" motion. She steps into view, her form haloed by the flickering silver. She looks different than before, calmer, somehow, but with an edge to her posture, like she expects a divine reprimand at any moment. Her fingers twitch constantly, an old habit she used to hide, but now they move with purpose, shaping invisible lines in the air. She meets your eyes for a fleeting second and smirks. "Did you enjoy Athena's little performance?" she asks, gesturing vaguely toward the outer chamber. You sense something layered behind the question, frustration wrapped in resignation, tied off with a loose knot of defiance. Arachne hasn't stopped weaving, she's just changed the kind of loom she uses. A mainstream fact anchors itself in your mind. The historical figure of Arachne, if she existed, might have belonged to a real weaving guild in Lydia, a region known for its luxury textiles. Some scholars even propose she could have been part of a trade lineage famous for dyed threads. But then comes the fringe tidbit, the belief held by a small group of ancient commentators that Arachne's rivalry with Athena symbolized a tension between divine order and mortal creativity, a coded warning that innovation always risks punishment in old-world traditions. Honestly, it feels like an early version of if you invent something too cool, the boss gets mad. You step closer, cautiously. Arachne tilts her head, watching you with the wary patience of someone who's been burned before, emotionally and mythologically. Her new loom flickers with tiny sparks whenever she touches the threads, each spark drifting upward like a firefly. They gather near the ceiling, forming small, glowing clusters that pulse gently, reacting to her mood more than her technique. "You're here for Athena," she says, not a question. Or maybe for an answer she won't give you. You open your mouth, but she waves a hand dismissively. "Relax. I know how this story goes. The goddess always wins." She says it lightly, yet the bitterness clings like dust. You notice the owl shift, feathers bristling, as if bracing for an argument it's witnessed 1,000 times. The chamber deepens behind her, the walls curving inward like a cocoon. You take a step inside, and the air suddenly warms. Not uncomfortably, more like stepping near a sunlit window. Threads drift down from the ceiling, brushing your arms as you pass. They leave faint tingles, little static kisses. You almost laugh because if divine threads give you hives, you're going to need an entirely different kind of mythic intervention. Arachne watches you, faintly amused. "You're brave," she murmurs. "Or foolish. Maybe both." She gestures toward the tiny loom. "This is what's left of my craft. Not punishment. Not curse. Something in between." She flicks a glowing thread, and it unspools into an image of her old mortal workshop, small, cluttered, warm, alive with a soft shuffle of wool. The image dissolves quickly, evaporating like steam. She takes a breath, long and tense. "I wasn't wrong, you know." You sense she said this before, maybe hundreds of times, to herself, to the rocks, to the threads that don't argue back. "My skill wasn't arrogance. It was talent.
Real.
Earned. But gods hate to be matched. And Athena..." She stops, choosing her words with surprising gentleness. "Athena doesn't forgive competition. Even when she pretends to." The owl fluffs up indignantly. You resist the urge to side-eye it. You reach out, hovering a hand near the silver-lit loom. Arachne watches closely, but she doesn't stop you. The loom's threads tremble, sensing your proximity. You feel a soft vibration, almost a heartbeat, like the loom recognizes you. Or judges you. Hard to tell. Above you, the glowing clusters shift into complex patterns, spirals, waves, knots, all weaving themselves into a tapestry of light. It's mesmerizing, hypnotic, an entire world built from thread and memory. Arachne's voice softens. Athena thinks she controls the threads of fate, but she forgets something. She picks up a tiny thread, barely visible. Every loom has loose ends. You swallow. The cavern seems to lean in, listening. A faint rumble echoes from the corridor behind you, the unmistakable sound of footsteps. Heavy, measured.
Divine.
Arachne steps back into the shadows. "You should go," she whispers. "You're about to see what happens when a goddess doesn't like being outsmarted." The owl takes flight, circling once before diving toward the corridor. You follow. And behind you, the silver loom shivers. A spark pops. A thread snaps. And the chamber exhales like something long hidden has finally begun to wake. You don't realize how quickly you're moving until you feel your breath stutter a little in your chest, the cool cavern air rushing around you in thin, sharp drafts. The owl glides ahead, silent now, which is rarely a good sign. Even its wings seem tense, tight arcs, no flutter. No wasted motion. You follow the corridor as it curves, narrowing again until the walls nearly brush your shoulders. The sound behind you, those steps, echoes with a kind of authority that doesn't need to speak its name. You've heard enough stories by now to recognize the rhythm of a goddess who walks like she owns gravity. The floor slopes upward until you emerge into a new chamber, tall and bright. A shaft of natural light pours in from an opening high above, sparkling against dust motes that drift like tiny drifting lanterns. This space feels older than the rest of the cavern system. Older and quieter, as if whoever carved it out wanted to leave room for thinking. Or confronting. Or both, which feels very on-brand for Athena. The owl lands on a broken column near the center of the chamber. You follow its gaze and see faint carvings etched along the base. Scenes of battles, heroes, ships slicing through stylized waves. A mainstream fact trickles in. The owl was genuinely one of Athena's most widely used symbols in classical Athens, appearing on coins, shields, and even household pottery. The quirky tidbit slips in right behind. Some ancient folks believed the owls were literal spies for her, reporting mortal gossip straight to Olympus. Honestly, imagine living in a world where you couldn't even complain about your neighbor's terrible wine without worrying a bird was taking notes. But none of that fully registers, because the footsteps finally catch up. They stop just outside the chamber, and the silence stretches thin like the moment before a thread snaps. Then Athena enters. She doesn't storm in. She doesn't blaze like a comet. She steps across the threshold with the precision of someone who has measured this moment down to the breath. Her armor glints, but softly. Less battlefield glare, more moonlit steel. Her expression is unreadable at first glance, then unsettling when you realize it's unreadable on purpose. Athena doesn't just calculate, she curates. "You've been busy," she says, her voice echoing just enough to make you aware of the cavern's height. It isn't anger. It isn't warmth. It's that mildly amused tone teachers use when they know you did something questionable but also kind of impressive. Your throat does a small, undignified click. The owl flutters to her shoulder, settling in with practiced ease. She reaches up, brushing a finger across its feathers, then shifts her gaze to you, studying you in that way only someone with centuries of strategy in their bones can. You feel simultaneously seen and inspected, like a tapestry being checked for flaws. "I sensed you near the looms," she continues. "Both of them. There's no point lying. Your face probably already betrayed you 3 anxieties ago." She walks a slow arc around you, her sandals making almost no sound on the stone. "Arachne is consistent," she murmurs. "Even now, even after all this time." The faintest sigh escapes her. Impressive mortals tend to be.
You swallow again.
Your stress hydration levels are way off the charts. Athena stops in front of you. You've seen how she works. You've seen what she chooses to remember. And what she chooses to forget. She tilts her head, studying you not as a threat, but as a variable in a very long equation. "Tell me, did her little display convince you?" You realize this is one of those moments where answering is optional, but silence is worse. You manage something like a sentence, though your voice sounds like you borrowed it from someone 2 sizes smaller. Athena listens without interrupting, a skill that somehow feels more intimidating than if she'd cut you off. When you finish, she looks momentarily thoughtful. Real thought, not the decorative kind gods sometimes use. "Arachne is brilliant," she says. "No one denies that. Least of all me." You almost choke. Praise? Actual praise? But she continues before you can mentally screenshot the moment. And brilliance, when wrapped in pride, can spark revolutions. Or ruin. There's a gentle sarcasm in her tone when she adds, "Historians still argue whether my punishment was excessive." You blink. She said it herself. The goddess openly acknowledging a scholarly debate is strange. Comforting even. Maybe she reads academic articles when she's bored. She walks toward the far wall of the chamber, where the light falls strongest. The stone here is smoother, polished by centuries of meaning. With a touch of her hand, an image appears, threads of gold brightening across the surface like a waking constellation. It forms a tapestry, but not woven, projected, alive, twisting through memory and intent. It shows the challenge between Athena and Arachne, but not the version you heard in childhood bedtimes. This perspective feels more intimate, more charged. You see Athena's frustration, yes, but also something else you never noticed in the old tales. Worry. Genuine worry. For order. For balance. For what happens when a mortal proves the gods can be matched. Skill is not the threat, Athena says quietly. Rebellion is not the threat. But pride without perspective, she flicks her fingers and the threads shiver, can unravel more than a single life. You hear something shifting behind the tapestry of light. A low hum, familiar and sharp. A loom hum, but not the one you saw earlier. This one is deeper, older. You realize the enchanted loom in the other chamber wasn't the main loom at all, it was bait. A preview. A reminder. Athena turns back toward you. You walked into a history that never truly ended. You walked into a rivalry that still threads itself through the world. She steps closer until her presence feels like standing inside a thought sharpened to a point. And now, you must decide what you do with what you've learned. Your brain helpfully offers. Asterisk panic? Cry? Ask for a coupon code? Asterisk. You wisely keep those options silent. A faint rustle echoes from the shadowed corridor. Arachne's voice, far away, but still there. The sound of threads pulling tight. Athena hears it too. Her eyes narrow, just slightly. It seems, she says, that one loose end is tugging at the others. The golden tapestry flickers. The cavern lights tremble. The owl tenses. And your pulse races as the whole chamber seems to inhale, preparing for whatever unravels next. The inhale of the chamber sweeps through you, cold at first, like the breath of some hidden mountain thing, then warmer, threaded with a faint metallic tang. Athena's eyes shift toward the far corridor, and the owl straightens so abruptly you wonder if divine birds suffer neck cramps. The golden tapestry behind her flickers, its threads buzzing like a hive disturbed. You brace yourself with one small, brave step backward, which is really just a strategic repositioning your future self will absolutely thank you for. Athena doesn't move at first. She stands there as still as a carved statue, except statues don't radiate palpable tension. You can feel her mind working, calculating, mapping, selecting the next 36 moves. You get the sense she's not just thinking about you or Arachne or even this moment, but about centuries of consequences braided together like an intricate rope. Historians still argue whether Athena was genuinely a goddess of emotional balance or just exceptionally good at hiding when things bothered her. Watching her now, you'd believe either theory. Another sound bleeds into the chamber, thin, wavering, like a plucked string struggling to stay in tune. You've heard it once already. The snap of a thread. Not a physical thread. Something subtler. Something woven into intentions and stubbornness and divine pride. The goddess finally speaks. Stay behind me. You don't argue. Even your anxiety doesn't argue. That's how you know the situation is serious. Athena steps forward toward the trembling corridor. Light gathers around her, not flaring, not dramatic, just steady, like she's pulling authority into her palms. The owl takes flight again, circling the chamber as though trying to draw boundaries around whatever is about to unfold. Arachne's silhouette appears first. She walks slowly, but there's nothing hesitant in her movements. Her hands glow faintly, fingers trailing thin lines of silver light that evaporate behind her. She looks at Athena, not with hatred, not with fear, but with a kind of weary sharpness, the expression of someone who has been rehearsing the same argument for centuries and is now ready to improvise. You feel like you're watching two magnets edge toward each other, drawn and repelled at the same time. Athena's voice is calm when she speaks. Arachne. Arachne stops at the threshold of the chamber. You always did love grand entrances, she replies, her tone soft but edged. Her gaze flickers to you for a heartbeat, then returns to the goddess. Your mortal wandered into my space. You created the lore, Athena says. You left the path open. Arachne smirks. I leave many things open. Threads. Questions. Wounds. You wince. That line definitely sounded like it came from the deluxe edition of Ancient Grudges. The chamber responds before Athena does. The golden tapestry behind her shivers violently, projecting images that swirl between past and present. You catch flashes, a mortal bent over a loom, Athena in her earliest myths, standing beside the first spinning fibers, the quiet fury of Arachne turning thread after thread with her unmatched skill. Arachne lifts her hands. Silver strands coil between her fingers, weaving themselves into a tiny lattice of glowing pattern. For a moment, it hangs there, delicate, mesmerizing. Then it dissolves, scattering like powdered starlight. You punish excellence, she says quietly. You call it hubris, but you fear what it reveals. Athena's jaw tightens, but only slightly. I punish disrespect. There is a difference. Not to mortals, Arachne says. not to those who spend their lives learning what the gods can do in a blink. The owl dives suddenly, swooping between the two figures, feathers brushing the air like a warning. Its cry is sharp, not aggressive, but urgent. Athena raises a hand, and the tapestry dims. Arachne, you tampered with the secondary loom. Arachne's expression flickers, pride, guilt, defiance, all doing a quick shuffle. I didn't tamper, she says. I adjusted. You destabilized it. You swear the temperature drops 2 degrees. Arachne lifts her chin. The loom reflects truth. If the truth shakes, that's not my fault. Athena steps closer, and the air between them tightens. You honestly can't tell whether they're about to argue, duel, reconcile, or host a passive-aggressive craft workshop. You clear your throat softly. Probably a mistake. Both immortal figures look at you at the same time, and you immediately regret being alive. Athena breaks the gaze first, turning back to Arachne. Your adjustments risk unraveling far more than your pride. Arachne's shoulders soften, not in surrender, but in something like tired understanding. I know, she says. The loom showed me. Athena hesitates. Just a breath. But it's the first true hesitation you've seen from her. You came here because you thought you could correct it alone, Athena says slowly. No, Arachne closes her eyes. I came because I couldn't. Silence folds over the chamber. Deep, resonant, almost soothing. You realize you're witnessing something scholars debate endlessly, whether the rivalry between Athena and Arachne ever softened into mutual respect. One ancient poet hinted at a secret reconciliation. Others dismissed it as hopeful fiction. But now, seeing them stand here, threads glowing faintly around their hands, you're suddenly not so sure the hopeful version was fiction. Athena exhales, and the tension in the chamber loosens by a thread's width. If the loom falters, she says gently, we repair it. Together. Arachne looks up. Not triumphant. Not humbled. Just alive. And the mortal? She asks with a nod toward you. Athena glances your way again, her expression unreadable but not unkind. The mortal chose to walk this path. And now they'll see it through. You try to nod in a way that communicates both confidence and mild regret. The golden tapestry brightens once more, casting long warm streaks across the floor. Athena lifts her hand. Arachne mirrors her. Light begins to pool between them, gold mixing with silver, becoming something neither entirely divine nor entirely mortal. The chamber grows warm, bright, humming. And you have a feeling you're about to witness the kind of moment myths are stitched from, carefully, delicately between breaths. The light gathers so quickly that you blink out of instinct, even though some small, brave part of you wants to keep your eyes open for every fraction of this moment. Gold arcs from Athena's hand, silver from Arachne's, the threads spiraling together in a slow, deliberate helix that looks almost alive. The glow hums at a low frequency, like the world's sleepiest beehive, and the air around you warms until it feels like standing too close to a sunlit window on an early spring afternoon. The owl circles overhead, tracing wide loops through the shifting brightness. Even it seems caught between worry and fascination, its feathers puffing every now and then as if reacting to currents of invisible threads swirling beneath it. The floor vibrates softly, not enough to threaten your balance, but enough to remind you that you're standing inside a crisis that most mortals would really prefer to watch from a safe distance. Preferably behind a railing, with snacks. You inhale slowly, feeling the warmth settle across your skin. The threaded light drifts downward, touching the chamber floor, and then sinking into it like water seeping into thirsty ground. Your senses open in a strange, widening way, faint, metallic notes like struck bronze, the earthy smell of crushed stone, a subtle crackling sound that reminds you of fabric stretching, not tearing, but adjusting under pressure. Athena's voice breaks through the glow, level and quiet. The loom responds. Arachne nods, but her expression tightens. It's unstable. The core is unraveling faster than it should. Historians still argue whether divine looms were ever believed to hold literal cosmic influence or whether ancient storytellers just really loved metaphors. But right now, as the chamber trembles beneath your feet, metaphor feels like it left the building a long time ago. The golden tapestry behind you reappears, pulsing faintly, its images scrambled by the energy flooding the space. You catch glimpses, threads snapping, landscapes folding in on themselves, ancient patterns warping into new, unpredictable shapes. Your pulse jumps. If this is what the secondary loom caused, you don't want to imagine what the main one looks like right now. Athena steps forward, reaching toward the center of the light. The core needs a stabilizing point, she says, almost to herself. Arachne replies softly, or a witness. You blink. What now? Athena turns her gaze toward you. Not intimidating, not judging, simply assessing. Mortals see differently. We weave with intention. You see the thread's path. You try very hard not to panic. I don't weave anything. Arachne gives a small, tired smile. You walked through every chamber. You watched both looms. You noticed the tension, but didn't break it. Her eyes soften. That's all a witness is. You can't decide whether this is an honor or a cosmic setup, but you step forward anyway, guided by something that feels instinctual and absurdly calm. The light thickens around you, shimmering like warm mist. Threads drift close, brushing your arms, leaving a phantom warmth as they pass. You lift your hand, hesitating only because it seems rude to touch divine phenomena without asking. Athena inclines her head. Permission. So you reach. And the moment your palm meets the braided helix of gold and silver, the chamber shifts. Not physically, spiritually, perceptually, mythically, like someone turned the entire world into a tapestry and then decided you deserved a peek at the pattern on the back. For a few breaths, you see everything in threads. The walls, the air, the goddess, the mortal-turned weaver, all of them composed of lines twisting and converging. You see the instability Arachne noticed, a trembling not deep in the core of the weave, vibrating wildly. You don't know how you know what to do, but you do. You find a single thread near the knot, thin, faint, flickering, and you steady it with your fingertips. The thread warms instantly, responding to your touch. The knot slows, tightens, recenters. Athena exhales, the sound soft and almost relieved. Arachne's shoulders drop, tension sliding off her like dust shaken from old cloth. The light quiets, dimming until it becomes a gentle, pulsing glow between the goddess and the mortal craftswoman. The helix untwists, settling into a floating strand that drapes across the chamber like a peaceful banner. Arachne steps back first, her gaze unexpectedly warm. You did well, she murmurs. Better than some apprentices I've had. Athena adds, with a faint half-smile, and better than many I've taught. You try to respond with dignity, but your voice cracks like a dropped clay pot. It's fine. Everyone here understands. For a long moment, the chamber holds its silence gently, like it, too, needed a breath. Arachne moves toward the corridor, pausing once to look at Athena. Balance, she says simply. Athena nods. Balance. And somehow, impossibly, that single exchange feels like the first stitch in a new pattern, one neither rivalry nor victory, but something quieter, something shared. Arachne disappears down the passage, silver light trailing faintly behind her. Athena steps beside you, eyes softening. You've done what most mortals never witness. She places a hand over yours, not heavy, not burdensome, just grounding. And you've left the loom stronger than you found it. The owl lands at your feet, tilting its head proudly like it expected this outcome all along. Athena turns toward the chamber entrance. It's time to leave this place, she says gently. The threads will rest now. You follow her toward the fading glow, your steps slow, each one pulling you farther from the tension and closer to a peaceful, soothing stillness. The cavern softens around you, less a place of conflict and more a cradle of cooling echoes. And as the last thread of light dissolves behind you, you feel the world settle, quiet, warm, whole again. The cavern mouth opens into a gentle slope of stone, and the air that greets you is softer now, calm in a way that seems to hush even your loudest thoughts. The sky outside has shifted into a warm, velvety dusk, the kind that smooths the edges of everything it touches. You breathe out slowly, letting your shoulders drop, letting the warmth of the world wrap around you like a familiar blanket. Your steps grow smaller, quieter, as if the ground itself is encouraging you to ease into the rhythm of rest. The owl circles once overhead, slower than before, its wings whispering through the cooling air, and then it settles on a high branch where it can watch over the fading path. It doesn't hoot this time. It doesn't need to. Its presence alone feels like a lantern dimmed low beside a bedside table. Far behind you, deep in the cavern, the woven glow of gold and silver pulses with a soft, steady breath, a reminder that the threads are healing, settling, dreaming in their own ancient way. Even Athena's footsteps become quieter as she walks a little ahead, her armor no longer shining sharply, but muted, like moonlight reflected on calm water. Her voice, when she finally speaks, is low, smooth, drifting back to you like a lullaby that's been carried through many centuries. Rest now, she murmurs. The story holds. You follow the path until the rocks level into soft earth, and the world around you begins to blur gently at the edges, colors fading into deeper shades, sounds softening until they dissolve into a single long breath. You let your eyes lower, not closing fully, just drifting, the way dreams first arrive, slowly, quietly, kindly. And as the last hint of tension unwinds from your chest, the night folds around you like a warm, woven quilt. Sweet dreams.